Next bill before us, and thank you for the discussion, members. That is probably the largest public works project yet in the state history, so I think it's important to have that discussion. We'll continue to discuss, and especially after the, I'm going to name it the Kraft report, comes out June 15th. Representative Anderson will move House File 3562 to the Ways and Means.
Thank
All
you.
right, welcome to the committee. Just trying to organize the paperwork. Go ahead and introduce your bill or make the motion yourself as a member of the committee to
Yeah,
Ways and Means.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House File 3562 to Ways and Means. Did you want to take the amendment first, or should I go ahead?
Nope. Let's take the A1 amendment. That's an author's amendment to get the bill in the proper order. And I'll just note that we're working with our Senate colleagues, and of course, we like to make sure, tidy things up and make sure the bill is in the form that works best for Minnesotans. So I will move the A1 amendment for you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to start out.
Why don't we just adopt the A1 amendment?
Okay.
Do you want me to explain it? The A1 amendment just uses, the general fund dollars for the reduction in the underlying bill. All those in favor of the, or do you want discussion?
Yeah. So this is, I'm confused as to what's going on here again. As this is an author's amendment to get the bill in the way you would like it, because this is a pretty massive, this is not a technical little change of things. This is a pretty serious way of doing things. So I would like to talk about this before we adopt this amendment.
Sure, yeah, and I just introduced it for expediency, but it is an author's amendment. So go ahead, if Chair Dapke, with any questions.
Okay, so this is, how do we want to start this? Yeah, let's hold off on the amendment until after would be great, yeah.
Okay, let's do it that way. Generally, we
Okay.
just adopt the author's amendments, but we can have a discussion. Just talk about the bill overall, Rep. Anderson, and then we'll have the discussion on the A1, it looks like.
I will.
Thank you. Please proceed.
Thank you. I want to just start out, I want to read something that I got from a constituent that I think a lot of you have also received. It says, "Good morning, Representative Anderson. I'm one of your constituents from Matamidi. I'm writing to you regarding vehicle registration tabs. I recently purchased a new pickup truck, Chevy Silverado with mid-trim, nothing too fancy, but good for towing. Since it's a new truck, I was expecting tabs to be somewhat expensive. But after seeing a bill of over $800, I'm in complete shock. Myself, like many in your community, can't imagine how this is made into law, and I'm hoping you'll fight for us to get this changed. Please reach out." We have received, all of us, numerous emails and phone calls like that. Numerous. Because the sticker shock of what happened 2 years ago, or 3 years ago now, when the DFL trifecta changed the tab schedule, raised them by over 20%, and changed the depreciation schedule, that is now coming down. Now we have absolute sticker shock of something that was passed a couple of years ago. I want to start by pointing out, we're going to put a couple little quick slides up on the screen. The first one is, you got it? Let me get it. This is important. The first one is the depreciation schedule that the tab bill, there we go, laptop one. All right, there we go. On the left is the Kelly Blue Book of essentially what car depreciation is, according to Kelly Blue Book. So after 1 year, you buy a car, you walk out, it's depreciated 16%, 12% the next year, and so on and so forth. The tab bill, the tab law is currently, we currently have, does depreciation at 5% a year. 5%. And so what you have, folks, is not only dramatically increased prices, but you have people paying at a significantly higher, value of cars than their cars are actually worth. And that's what's led to a lot of the huge increases in tab costs. I'm going to go to the next slide. And this is where the sticker shock is. If you take a look at how tab fees compare to our other states, Wisconsin, where I'm 15 minutes from the Wisconsin border, 15 minutes, it's $85 flat fee. South Dakota, $75. North Dakota, $73, or if you have a big truck, it's $93. And even in Illinois, which we all think of as a poorly run, high-tax state, it's $151. Minnesota is way over almost every state in the nation, the tab fees. And we are making driving incredibly expensive. Before I go to the next, I want to mention Representative Green, when we had the early discussion, she said, we have to decide, do we want to have, do we want to have a transit system, a Metro-wide transit? Do we want to have, and I know from being on this committee in the last 2 years that there are many people on this side of the aisle who believe in transit and that in fact we should discourage car ownership and we should discourage individual driving, and that transit is the way of the future. And we should all be willing to accept that, stop driving our cars, or driving them as much, and we should all be on a bus. But that's not reality, folks. That is not what people do. Certainly not anywhere outside of the core city, certainly not in greater Minnesota, and certainly not in the suburbs where I live. That's not how people, you cannot function. You cannot function. You cannot go to the grocery store. You cannot go to your businesses. You cannot come to the Capitol. You cannot go anywhere because we don't have, little light rail lines that go down every single road, which I think is, I get this impression that that's where we're going. And so what we've done, what happened 2 years ago is that by increasing tab fees 22% and changing the depreciation schedule, we have made things incredibly unaffordable for people in Minnesota. I have a couple of things. These are things that people have sent me. This is I hope you can see that. This is a bill that I'll actually tell you someone that works in this building sent me. This is a 1-year-old Tesla. Not an expensive Tesla. I think the car was about $48,000. It's over $1,000 for the tab fee. $1,000. That is people's rent payments in some cases. The next one is from the gentleman who I read his email. I actually asked him to send me his bill, and he did. $812. $812 for a $45,000 truck. Okay, that is absolutely unaffordable. And we are sticker shocking our citizens in the state, and it just can't go on. We passed the trifecta passed a 75-cent sales tax increase in the metro. That sales tax for transportation or transit, could be for transportation. That sales tax is bringing in $500 million a year. And we all know that the Met Council is flush with cash because a lot of this money is going there. We all know this. There is so much money within a transit budget that a tiny, tiny, tiny fraction of the people in the state use. And it's becoming, even tinier. My husband's office is in Woodbury, and it overlooks that 694, corridor. And they've sat and they watched this bus line get built, and they watch. And there's a big transit station. They're trying to figure out what it was in the beginning, and then then it finally came in, and they watch out their window, his entire staff, and nobody is at that transit stop. Nobody is riding that bus. And there have been numerous news articles about it. The world is changing. It's changing. But what this legislature has done a couple of years ago is we actually went the opposite direction, where we made it so individual people with their individual cars are getting priced out of the state. It is just wrong. We need to do something about that. So this bill, House File 3562, does exactly that. It brings the depreciation schedule back to what it was, which is realistic, which is real, you know. In fact, it's even, I would argue, maybe even a little high, because we all know it's 16% when you walk out the door that your car depreciates. It isn't 5 and it isn't 10, but the old schedule at least is 10 rather than the 5. So this brings it back to that, and it brings down the costs on these fees. And so it's something, if we are serious about making Minnesota affordable, this is something that we should be serious about doing. So thank you.
Thank you, Representative Anderson. We do have the motion for the author's amendment, the A1. Is it your desire to just, can we take that up and then just discuss the bill? Is that all right?
Yep.
All right. All those in favor of adopting the author's amendment A1 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
The motion prevails. Okay, so now we got it in there. We got on the list, Representatives Sentsumura, Cagle, and Kraft. We'll go in that order at this point, so please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Representative Anderson. So my question is about the author's amendment. Where are we cutting to find $732 million to pay for this? Thank you.
Thank you. So the author's one, it allows these funds to backfill essentially for roads to come out of the general fund. And that's something that we can do. It's something we've used general fund money to fund everything, multiple things. And so it actually comes out of the general fund, which we know that we have at least in the short term, and it's over the period of time, right? So it's, I have the actual numbers here somewhere on a fiscal note. But I think it's,
Representative Anderson, I don't believe that there are any cuts on there. We're using general fund taxpayer dollars.
yeah. It's semantics. So,
Representative Sentsumura?
yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I mean, I think just is really important to, especially for people that are not looking at this fiscal note, that don't have maybe the understanding that we do as legislators, like, if it's coming out of the general fund, it is coming out of something else that we fund. And I just heard one of your representatives on the floor today, Representative Kreshaw, saying that we should sine die. And one of the things that he brought up was the fact that the governor proposed $50 million cuts in special education funding. And I don't agree with what the governor proposed there. I think $50 million from special education is not something that we should do. I think it's something we should push back on. This bill is asking for 14 times that. And when it comes from the general fund, it comes from places like special education. It comes from places like money for nursing homes. It comes from places like pay for law enforcement. So these are the choices that we have to make. When I first saw the bill and I said, okay, we're cutting, where are we going to find $730 million to cut from roads and bridges or public transit? But now this is just saying that, kids don't get fed, teachers don't get paid, essential workers, don't get a living wage to pay for car tab fees, and I just don't agree with that approach.
Can I reply?
Go ahead, follow up if you need.
Thank you. There is nothing being proposed to be so-called cut. There are things, right now there's dollars in our, in our fund. So you can say it, maybe it's not future increases somewhere, future dollars spent on programs, whatever those are, or tax cuts, frankly, because we spend way too much money here as a state, and frankly, we should be cutting taxes. So this is a way to cut tab fee costs, Though we should be cutting taxes. We had $10 billion in tax increases 2 years ago.
Okay, Representative Cagle?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Money doesn't just magically appear, and it doesn't magically just sit there. This is real money that you're blowing almost $1 billion budget hole in our general fund. but absolutely no plan to replace that. So, and we know you all hate tax cuts, and, this is a really great headline bill that shows Republicans are going to be, whatever they are trying to sell this week. But the story behind it is that there's a $732 million budget hole you're creating with this bill. And so, is Trunk Highway 244 not going to get done in 2023 or in 2030? Probably not. US Trunk Highway 61 resurfacing? Probably not going to get done. And Minnesota Trunk Highway 97, where's the money going to come for those? We're talking about making sure that our roads and bridges are safe and drivable. This is not some abstract thing that people deal with every day. And if you want to talk about the EV fees, that was done last year. That I was in those negotiations. I was trying to find a progressive way to do EV funds. And that's not what the compromise ended up being. So if you want to talk about the EV fees, you can thank your chair here. Minnesota has nearly 20,000 more miles than Wisconsin. Do our roads cost less per mile than Wisconsin's? Because it's $1 million a mile to build a road. $1 million a mile. So we're talking about, this is real to people. These are not only that, but these are jobs. Look in your packets. Trade unions, contractors, cities, our League of Cities, Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities, Metro Cities,
Chair Anderson, did
Association
any
of
of these
Counties.
groups
I'm
contact
actually
you?
still speaking. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And so this is classic. So we come in, we fix the giant hole in the budget, make sure that we can actually take care of our roads and bridges and assets, and then you guys put in a bill that just blows it all up without any plans. So this is not serious. This is just for talking points, and I suggest a no vote.
Representative Anderson, or should we move on to the next Representative
How much
Kraft?
time do we have?
Excuse me?
I'm happy to argue it on the other way, but I know there's other speakers and we have 5 minutes left, so.
Yeah, well, I guess I'm glad you raised the point of these stakeholders that sent letters. They didn't talk to the author, which I think is bad form, and they didn't understand that there is no cuts to roads in your bill as is amended. So the reality is, during the trifecta, the taxes were raised on Minnesotans, and Minnesotans are contacting their representatives, and they're questioning it, if not furious. Thank you for bringing the bill that makes driving more affordable. Representative Kraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Representative Anderson. I don't have much to add to what's been said. I do think that when one's proposing this drastic of a cut from anywhere, that it should be a responsibility to propose what is being cut. And just saying, well, we can find it, I don't find that responsible. The thing I want to request of you, as I didn't do a point of order, but when you were speaking, you were implying motives of people on this side of we want everyone to not have a car and to only do transit. And I think that crossed the line into implying motives for me and some of my colleagues, and I'd appreciate if you wouldn't do that. Thank you.
Representative Fogelman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Representative Anderson, for bringing this bill. As somebody who lives in rural Minnesota and we own a small business, I can tell you that our taxes on our cars, our vehicles have gone from about $5,000 a year to $8,000 a year. And when you own a small business, and these are not new vehicles by any means, that hurts. And I think of how small a business we are, and I can't imagine that helping any business in our state, and again, continue to push businesses out of our state that we keep losing. I think I read the other day that we lost another $1 billion tax base last year. And that's gonna allocate to everybody in our tax base. We did have $18 billion surplus, and we've had $9 billion worth of fraud that I think could have kept our roads safe and been spent on those kind of things, that's what we're supposed to be doing here in the Transportation Committee. So thank you for bringing this bill. I hope that we can make Minnesota more affordable for our citizens. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Representative Joy.
Thank you, Representative Anderson, for this. This is making Minnesota more affordable. When we talk about Wisconsin, we talk about greenhouse gas mitigation here. I can't go from Fargo when they're building a brand-new interstate with 8 new lanes, and then I got to go to Minnesota. We won't be able to afford that project. The district supervisor, Minnesota district supervisor, said that because of the greenhouse gas mitigations to add more lanes. So we can't really compare Wisconsin tabs to roads more expensive. They are more expensive in Minnesota to build because of the regulations we put on. So I do appreciate this bill. I think this bill here is, when you think about where the money's going to come from, well, we took it from the taxpayers. We're not a revenue generator down here. I don't think we run this as a business. We're taking the taxpayers' money, giving it back to them. We're making it more affordable. This is hitting people's pockets as they renew their tabs this year. We're not going to stop building roads and bridges, but we are going to make people be able to afford their homes, be able to afford their medicine, be able to afford groceries. A lot of this stuff. We fight for so many things down here to make Minnesota affordable, but yet we raise taxes $10 billion. When is enough enough? Thank you, Representative Anderson.
Thank you. Representative Tapke, I'll make a couple comments and you can, I just want to share something, 2 things. One was an email that was sent to a representative, I won't say their name, and it wasn't to me, this was shared with me. It says, "What in the heck did you vote for? I'm renewing my car tabs for a 23 Acura, which has a Kelly Blue Book value of about $33,000, but I'm being taxed on a value of $63,000. So he's being taxed on something he doesn't even own. What are you going to do to all us citizens? This is a horrible thing that I'm sure you voted for and that I don't understand the justification. Are you supportive of your colleagues' offhanded comment about increasing taxes 5-fold? I don't need to finish that one. So people are upset, and Minnesotans are upset, and they want, there wasn't a lot of discussion happening when it happened. But also, I have a neighbor who bought a used 22 little sport utility for their family. They paid $36,000. They bought it in 2005, and it was like 3 years old. They bought it, the 22 sport utility. They paid $36,000 for it, but the base value is that they're being taxed on is $51,395, which equates to a tab fee annually of $607.25. Like you mentioned, that's like a half for a lot of people, rent payment, sometimes half of a rent payment. But so Minnesotans don't understand why they're being taxed more, and then their tab fee is not going down as it usually does the longer you own a vehicle. So thank you for showing that depreciation schedule. There is a letter in here from the Minnesota Auto Dealers Association in support of this bill. And when we have the transportation forecast, we're actually losing dedicated dollars into the transportation fund because motor vehicle sales tax is down, meaning people are buying less brand new vehicles. Now that they know that it's more expensive to own a vehicle in Minnesota, Minnesotans are going to slow down on before they buy another new vehicle and purchase more used vehicles or just not buy new vehicles as often because they can't afford it. So that's what this bill, I'm glad that you introduced it and are authoring it because you're trying to make driving in Minnesota, owning a vehicle for your family more affordable in Minnesota. So thank you for bringing the bill and finding current revenue to continue to maintain our roads. Representative Tapke, and then we're going to go to a vote.
Thank you very much, Chair Koznick. So I as well, Representative Anderson, will thank you for bringing this bill. Like oddly enough, am fully on board. Like I very much agree with you that tab fees are way too high, that they are, it's not what we would want to have it be in the state of Minnesota. And we have a massive gap in our maintenance. We have a massive gap in maintaining one of the largest roadway systems in the world. And so this is one of the ways that was able to fill that gap so that Representative Fogelman has good roads to drive on for her business. Like that is, if we had terrible roads in Minnesota, that would absolutely drive business away. There is zero question about that whatsoever. And so we have for years been working on finding ways to transfer more, to get more general fund money into the transportation system. And I think that that is, without a doubt, the best way to fund transportation. Unfortunately for us, when there are education needs, when there are home health care workers that need to be paid more and all these things I agree with as we go forward, then transportation gets cut. And so transportation has dedicated funds for those reasons so that we can still maintain our roads, but it's not nearly as, it doesn't pull at the heartstrings as much as making sure that we are funding a world-class education and making sure that we are having our a healthcare system that works for folks. And so that's the pull here, right? And that's the push and pull as to how we are funding transportation. Transportation has dedicated funds. So if we were to pass this today, what would happen? And maybe this is a question for you, Chair Kosnick. Like, if we were to pass this today, what would happen? Because I want to get more general fund into the transportation system, and this would absolutely do that. It is I think everyone in this room knows, and everybody who ends up voting for this knows that this is a disingenuous, this is a non-workable, this is a problematic bill for how we would fund transportation in the state of Minnesota. So I'll ask both the representative and Chair Kosnick, like, we don't have a target. We don't have any funding. So what would happen if we pass this today?
Well, last year we had a negative target. That doesn't mean you have to,
No, my question is, what would happen if we pass this today?
Understood. We would have more dollars, with the same amount of dollars in our transportation system as we currently do. Minnesota taxpayers, Minnesota families would have more money in their pocket.
Mr. Chair. No, we're gonna, what would happen fundamentally, Mr. Chair, if we pass this today? Where would this $732 million in the next biennium, $159 million in this biennium, where would that money come from? You know that you can't just say that it comes from the general fund. What are you going to do? How could this work in reality? You know this is wrong. You know that we can't do this. You're doing this just...
Careful with pushing motives here and that a little bit.
You know this is wrong. So...
No, it's not wrong. This
how
is what
would you do this?
I got your question. Minnesota taxpayers from a variety of sources are paying into the general fund. Families are working hard and harder every year to pay the taxes that are due. It's tax season even.
I agree with you. You're
Wait,
evading the question.
I'm answering the question. Please don't interrupt. Minnesota taxpayers are also now concerned about rising tab fees, and there is a surplus of dollars in our state ongoing, and we can afford this. Simple as that.
So we're in a positive economic outlook now? Is that what I'm hearing?
We do not have a revenue problem in the state. There is a structural problem with continuing new programs that are overspending in the out years. But this bill, as it sits, would continue to fund our roads and bridges and reduce the burden on taxpayers and drivers.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, can I?
Representative
I know,
Anderson.
thank you, and I know we're running out of time. This will go to Ways and Means, obviously, where they would make determinations about things, obviously. So that's what we've asked. We've asked for this to go to Ways and Means, where they can make determinations about bills, spending, et cetera. And that's where this should go, because this should be in the mix. It's 100, and I think it's 159 in this biennium, and there's future bienniums. And this would change the numbers, assuming all other spending and all other programs remains the same. And again, we don't know what the outlook is going to be a year from now. We don't know what's going to happen. But assuming nothing changes, this would be something that would be in the mix. But I can tell you, Representative Tabke and others, there is so much fraud in some of these state programs that we could pay for this 5 times over. down the road when we negotiate future budgets. There's that much fraud.
Okay, thank you, Representative Anderson.
Chair Kosnick, I request a roll call on this.
A roll call will be granted. Representative Tabke, quick comments?
Yeah, I continue to agree with the intent of this bill and wanting to make sure that we are reducing tab fees. It's just absolutely a disingenuous, not real path forward. I am disappointed that, like, if this is just, like, I was okay with just voting no on the tab fee side of things, but then when you have the general fund amendment on here, this is something that would hurt Minnesotans. We would have to cut teacher pay. If you vote yes for this, you're cutting teacher pay, you're cutting home health care worker pay, you are cutting roads, like you are cutting things that we genuinely care about in the state of Minnesota, because this would be a event, and probably in the following biennium, over $1 billion that you would be cutting out of our general fund system in order to make this work. And I wish we had MMB here to say how this would affect everybody. But I'm voting no because this is a disingenuous way to fund government.
Okay. Take a little exception with calling it a disingenuous bill. Representative Anderson, I appreciate your work on this. We can reduce tab fees and use general fund dollars and save Minnesota drivers
I
family
would love
budgets.
for that to be real.
We can, if we wanted to do it. Representative Ream, apologize to the chair. She wanted to comment, and then we'll go to a vote.
Thank you, Chair Kosnick. So I just wanted to point out the commissioner's notes here. She wrote a letter saying that between 2023 and 2042, the Minnesota Department of Transportation estimates there will be $36.7 billion available revenue to address a $52 to $57 billion in identified transportation needs on the state trunk highway system. So we don't have enough money right now to fix our roads. I think not having any more available revenue is going to be a real problem. Roads are expensive. Talk to the people who went over or who were affected by the bridge collapsing, the 35W bridge. It collapsed because we weren't keeping our roads in good shape. 13 people died, 145 people were injured. You know, saving money is great, and I'm all for that, but if we're going to be driving on roads, we need to keep them maintained. And with this bill, we will not be able to maintain them. We won't be able to keep up with what we need to do to maintain them, and so I cannot support this bill.
Thank you for the comments. I would also, again, recognize that the letter from the commissioner does not recognize that we're using general fund dollars to augment the current tab fee situation. The vote before us is, do we want to make driving more affordable for Minnesotans? Thank you for the bill. We could talk more about how our road system and cost are maintained. We will proceed with the road since we are over time. Mr. Baker, please proceed with the roll call.
Chair Kosnick.
Aye.
Chair Tabke.
No.
Vice Chair Myers. Vice Chair Ream.
No.
Representative Anderson.
Aye.
Representative Fogelman.
Yes.
Representative Green. Representative Jones.
Jones, no.
Representative Joy. Yes. Representative Cagle. No. Representative Kraft.
No.
Representative Lugar Nicolai.
No.
Representative Murphy. Representative Sensor-Mura.
No.
Representative Scrabo.
Aye.
The ayes are 7, the nays are 7.
The ayes are 7, nays are 7. The motion does not prevail. This committee will be adjourned. Thank you for your time, members.